Hey,
All
Oh,
right,
all right.
here we
cool.
are.
So
Okay,
how
fantastic.
we
Okay, here we go. All right, so I'm gonna just start and say good morning, good afternoon, and good night, depending where you are. This is the last official Gong Talk of this series, and we're very excited to have as special guests Claudio Salinas and Tim Byford, who are going to share their Gong journey and experience with sound and this phenomenal platform that we're all using now virtually during this time period. So I'm going to ask Don, is there anything you want to say before we get started?
I think Don is muted.
Oh, did he mute himself now? Okay.
Me.
I've unmuted you, Don. Is there anything you want to say before we get
No, there's
started?
nothing I want to say at all this morning.
You look very perky and excited for this Gong Talk.
I can't wait to hear, so I'm going to zip my lip and listen.
All right, I'm going to pass it on, Tim and Claudio. I'm going to mute myself. Thank you so much for coming and appearing today, and let's have a great Gong Talk.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you.
Um, yeah, this is such a huge topic, and we're only going to be able to touch on things. So the way that we're going to structure it is that Claudio is going to talk about his journey and experimentation that he's been doing, and then I'm going to pick up from there, and then we're going to open it out to questions. Because one of the things that I've realized over these last few months is that everyone's situation is completely bespoke. Everyone has a different resources that they can throw at this. Everyone has different levels of technical expertise. Everyone has different willingness to engage in that. And so what we hope to do is inspire a whole range of ways that wherever you're coming from, you can, if you have a desire to, begin to work digitally, be that doing pre-recorded stuff or with streaming. But we will only be able to touch on each thing. So the second part of it, where you can ask us questions, is going to be really valuable. And so I just encourage you to, as we talk about stuff, jot down your questions so we can do that. And then hopefully by answering each other's questions, then we'll kind of illuminate the subject a little for everyone. Um, so
Yeah,
that's yeah, Claudio.
I think you couldn't have put it more clearly. I mean, we will just sort of kind of go a little bit into many things because it's just so broad. But I think we can really, I mean, the idea and the intention is really to, for those of you who are still on that zone of fear, dealing with these issues, coming into this new world, to show you that it is still, that is possible, feasible, and doable for everyone.
And also, there are so many answers to everything, really. It was interesting when I was chatting with Claudio yesterday that we've come to kind of consensus on a lot of things. That there are, even though there's multiple ways of doing things, there are better ways, and yeah. So we'll share with you our experience, but there's all so much more to be discovered, and there's also new things happening all the time. For instance, a, a couple of weeks ago, Facebook announced that they are they are looking at putting a pay gateway into closed groups. So, which means if you want to host on Facebook, then there's a way of kind of um, charging people. So there's all sorts of things happening, and I'm sure that the VoIP platforms, which we're on now, Zoom, and all the other meeting platforms, because they've had so much resources pouring into them, they'll probably look at audio. Hopefully, so one of them will look at audio, but then it's about discovering which one is doing the best job. And I mean, that's a whole research topic in itself. And so maybe when we get to the questions, if anyone has got something that they've discovered and they want to share, that'll be great because we certainly don't know it all. There's just too much.
I'm also going to just cut in and say, please access and utilize the chat box. The little thing symbol is below, And then that way we can also direct the questions that way. We might as well use that little bit of technology as well.
Yeah. But as always, we'll begin with the universal greeting.
Of course.
So I'd encourage you to sit up straight, straighten your spine, inhale deep, connect with your breath. And smile.
Follow along. Some of the words you may not understand because you want to honor and the diversity of us all. So I offer you to
Kim,
Yeah.
can I just stop you guys for 1 second? Even though this worked really well during our audio check, it's not working right now.
Okay.
Because I can hear the shruti, but we can't hear you, Claudio. And just by the way, everybody, we did do a sound check and it sounded amazing before we started. So this just is a wonderful lesson and example on
It stops.
what do we need to do.
Lots of homework still. So.
But
But now it seems to be working, okay? Now can you hear me? Okay, so what I was saying is that we want to honor the diversity of us all. So we just do it together, and sometimes you won't understand the words, but just follow along. You know how it goes. So I offer you peace. Te ofrezco paz. Je t'offre la paix.
live long and
I offer
prosper.
you friendship. I offer you friendship.
I offer you friendship.
T'offre, je t'offre l'amitié. Je t'offre l'amitié. Te ofrezco amistad. I offer you love.
I offer you love.
Te ofrezco amor. Je t'offre l'amour. I hear your needs.
I hear your needs.
J'écoute tes besoins. Escucho tus necesidades.
I hear your needs.
I see your beauty.
I see your beauty.
Veo tu belleza. Je vois ta beauté. I feel your feelings.
I feel your feelings.
Je sens tes sentiments. Siento tus sentimientos. All wisdom flows from a higher source. Toute la sagesse découle d'une source plus élevée. Toda la sabiduría cae de una fuente más elevada. I honor that source in you. J'honore cette source en toi. Honro esta fuente en ti. Let us work together. Travaillons ensemble. Trabajemos juntos. Because you are my own true self. Parce que toi, tu es mon véritable moi. Porque tú eres mi verdadero yo. And I am another yourself. Et je suis un autre toi. Y tú eres otro yo. Together, we are one. Y juntos somos uno. Et ensemble, on n'est que un. Ensemble, on n'est que un. One heart. Un cœur. Un corazón. So be it. Il en soit ainsi, que así sea. All right. So, Tim, would you like me to start?
Yeah, dive in.
All right. So, welcome everybody. And you know what, as Tim is saying, what we want to do is really to speak for a little bit about our own personal journeys and a bit of what we're finding as we progress, and then open the space for questions. But so just to give a little bit of a disclaimer, I think there is a starting point in all this discussion. And that is that, you know, there are many realities, but there are two realities that are important to bear in mind for this particular point that we want to discuss today. We have the reality of our 3D world that works with technology, and this is what we'll discuss today. And then we have quantum reality, the reality in which miracles happen, the reality in which transmissions happen, the reality in which healing can happen across vast distances without any kind of technology involved. And you can have the best technology in the world, but without the power of intention, of that space of neutrality that we all need to be in when we play the gong, and without the sort of the symbolic preparation of your space by smudging or whatever rituals that you have, the best technology will never replace that. And even if you only have that and you don't have any technology, you can do wonders. That's kind of the first disclaimer that we wanted to say. It's so important to work on this transmission from the heart. And then we come into the sort of more 3D reality of technology and how we can have a good gong experience, knowing and bearing in mind that this experience will be different than being in a live gong bath. So just to talk a little bit about my journey, when all this happened, when COVID-19 struck, I mean, I was having a lot of things lined up, you know, always doing my thing, carrying the gongs, whatever, and suddenly from one day into the other, things just stopped. You know, the weekend that we started lockdown, I'm based in Belgium, the weekend that we started lockdown in Belgium, basically I have 5 gigs canceled out of the blue. So I, as probably some of you, I went into a bit of a panic mode. So what am I going to do? So I just started reading, preparing. And I discovered that, it's not all impossible. It's not all undoable. And I learned quite a bit, and I tried to express that in a little paper that some of you may have read that kind of sets a few of the basics. And just to go very quickly onto those basics, basically, it's really, we are always going to work in a continuum. And this continuum will have, in this continuum, there are all sorts of budgets, there are all sorts of equipment. I think, as Tim said, we have come to a point where we really see a way forward into the type of thing that would be ideal, but is not necessarily prescriptive. There are many things that you can do with very simple equipment. So I don't want anybody to get discouraged. So the first point is, what is sound? Sound is the dispersion of particles through the air after some kind of movement, like clapping our hands or playing our gong. And that sound, in order to enter into the digitosphere, needs to be captured somehow. How do you capture sound? You capture through a device that we call a microphone. This may be very obvious, but let's go from the very basics. We can speak 10 hours about microphones. But basically, microphones fall into two very large families. Dynamic microphones, you may all have seen this. They are like, the one that singers uses on stage, whatever. And condenser microphones. Condenser microphones, I don't have, but this one is a condenser microphone. Condenser microphones require a little bit of power to operate, and they have more sensitivity and can pick up more nuances of sound. For a dynamic microphone to get sound, you really need a big impulse of sound to get the sound out, and they don't pick necessarily all the nuances of sound. So you have those two families, condenser and dynamic microphones. Now, how do we, then you have the microphone, and then you're going to say, and what do I do with the microphone? I need something else. So the microphone picks up the sound, and we have to think of sound as, I always like to think it as a little bit like traffic. Like, you need the car going somewhere, so you need to follow the traffic, you need to follow the road. So that mic is connected to some kind of cable, and that cable is connected to some kind of device. Let's call it generally device right now. And that device can be different things. Can be a mixer, and a mixer looks a little bit like that thing over there with all the lights. That's a mixer. Can be a very simple recording device that, such as Zoom, which looks like this. And can be an audio interface, and I don't have that, but it's like a little box where you plug in directly your microphone. Those are the three, kind of very, very general families of where you can come in with your microphone. Now, I mentioned microphones, but there is another huge aspect that I'm sure Tim is going to touch upon, which is where are you going to put your microphone? And we can speak hours about that. Where do you place your microphone when you're playing the gong to get the best possible sound? So you need to see that will depend on the type of microphone that you get. But generally speaking, when we were discussing with Tim, perhaps the back of the gong is the best place to place your microphone. And ideally, again, condenser microphones will be more suitable to pick up nuances than dynamic microphones. It does not mean that you don't use a dynamic microphone. You can still use it. As I said, all is possible. Now, that little box or your mixer or your recorder needs to be, you need to get that into the internet somehow. So you do that through a computer, ideally. So the mixer or the audio interface or your recorder needs to be connected to your computer. From there, it provides an input that goes into your platform, whatever you're using. I mean, we're talking about Zoom, but there are a few other platforms out there, and we can discuss about that. And from that platform, you will do your broadcast. There are many, many, many factors that can be tweaked, that can be operated upon in these different settings. generally speaking, in the chats that we've had, we're coming to the conclusion that a mixer is probably the more suitable alternative if you want to do gonging. And why is that? Because you can bring several sources of sound. And remember what I said about traffic. You know, you bring a little highway here, another little road there, all in the same place. And from that place, you have a little traffic warden that directs traffic from here, goes there, traffic from here, go there. This one is too high, I can bring it down. And you can only do that with a mixer. You cannot do that with a digital audio with an audio interface. And with a recorder, you can only play around sometimes with the volume. But you cannot do any changing of settings such as equalization, of what is called in the sound world effects, or any of that sort. So I personally have been investing quite a bit of my time learning, and the idea is just to share with you this learning process. My learning curve is extremely steep because I started from just playing the gong. I mean, I've done gigs with sound engineers that I didn't know what they were doing, and I let them do their thing, and now I find myself getting more and more in this. And what I mentioned right now, it's only if you're doing live events, live gonging. Now there is a whole new chapter if you want to record, because recording implies processing. What does that mean? You get your traffic, you get the sound, you know what you like. It all goes into your computer, and from there, what you can do, you can alter things. You can say, okay, I don't like this particular tone, so I can change things a little bit. I want to bring up my singing bowls rather than my gong. All of that is done in another virtual space, which is called a digital audio workstation. And these are computer programs that are specific for that purpose. And, you know, they are, for sound engineers, I mean, it's their bread and butter. But for me, learning to work with the digital audio workstation was a bit of a challenge, but it's not impossible. And there are lots and lots of resources freely available to learn this. So because we wanted to have we want to have time for your questions, I just wanted to have that sort of very, very, very extremely broad introduction to what I wrote, you know, really going through these different phases. And then I'll hand over to Tim, because I'm sure he has a lot more to say, and then we'll be happy to go a little bit more in depth in specific questions that you may have. So thank you.
Thank you. So who here has already done live streaming? And out of those people, who used Facebook and Instagram as their platform? And who used something else? And put your hand down if that was YouTube or Twitch. Oh, we got so what, can you just unmute yourself and say what platform that you used to, or can I do it? So what was the other platform that was used to stream live? Anyone? Yeah. Fabio? What did you use? Yeah, you're unmuted. I can't hear you though. Maybe just type it in the chat. What platform you used. And out of those who haven't yet live streamed, is it because you are? Is it because you were afraid of, like, or have no clue where to go, or just not interested? Anyone?
Kim,
Yeah.
I tried, but it didn't come through. So I've only just bought a little microphone, but it's now more fear, and I've lost the continuity of all my bookings. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we just mute again,
Okay, I'm gonna Tim, let's try to use the chat just for the sake of time, and we'll do
Yeah,
the
just
unmute
yeah,
everybody at the end. Mute everybody and we'll start.
just mute again then, and
I think we are muted. Oh, okay.
so the thing that Claudia outlined is you've got this signal path where the gong reaches the listener's ear, and at every stage there is improvements that can be made depending on what resources that you wish to invest, but there are options for absolutely everyone, I would say, and and the first one, of course, in the Claudio's talked about, is you don't need to engage in technology other than the communication side, and then you mute, turn it off, and do these remote sessions. So even the thing is to find, hopefully by the end of this talk, you'll say, well, this is where I want to invest my time. I'm not interested in getting like a 8-channel mixer, 8 microphones, and broadcasting on YouTube and learning all that stuff. And the great thing is that there's gradients in between all of them. So if we take the first stage, the microphone stage, your options are the worst option is probably your laptop microphone. Phone microphones are marginally better, and some of them are actually quite good. And then you've got a USB microphone. So one single microphone that you can plug directly in via USB. And this is kind of your next level. But some of those are really decent quality. They're made by proper microphone manufacturers. And in terms of your technical engagement, you can just plug it into here and then select on Zoom, for instance, that microphone as source. And so it's really simple. And then the next level, well, these three maybe are like grouped together in terms of their technical complexity, and that is the audio interface, which again links to your computer via USB, a mixer, of which some of them are really simple, and I want to just pick up on one of the reasons why that's really good, even if you're not mixing several sources, because it's like really physical. You're not having to do stuff like this in the middle of your gong bath, which is really, oh, I want to just change the level of that. It's kind of the ability to just go to your mixing desk and apply some reverb so you can sing is really, really useful. So that was the audio interface, yeah, and the little Zoom recorder, or a recorder which can also act as a USB interface. But I would say if you haven't got one of those already, or you're not planning on doing field recordings, then that's not the option to go for. But if you have one, then they can be used as an audio interface. And so any of these options will work, and if you think, well, I'm not very technical, I don't really want to engage, then you select the USB microphone route and you use that as your one microphone source. If you wish to go on the next level of complexity, you get either an audio interface or a little mixer, and you might want to do a stereo broadcast, which means you'll need 2 microphones. Because stereo is this trick where you need like 2 sound sources and you place them like your ears. So the first broadcast I did, and if you're only using a single microphone, this is a good thing to pick up. The only way you can mix between the multiple sound sources that you've got, because for most of us, we don't want to just record gong, we also want to do tingsure, we want to do voice, and we want to do singing bowls. And the only way of mixing that, because you've only got one single microphone, is by proximity. And so the physical setup of your environment is really important. You know, if I place my microphone here and I have my delicate instruments here, my singing bowl here, because it doesn't produce enough volume, and then my voice, which is the next kind of level in volume, sits here, If I'm speaking, I might have to come in closer to the microphone. But if I'm singing, I have to move further back. And then the gongs are the furthest back. So that's your method if you're only using a single or a stereo microphone. And worth touching on here, the different types of microphones. So as Claudio said, the general consensus really is for the gong is a condenser microphone is the way to go. And then depending on what else you wish to capture and whether you're going for a stereo or if you're going for a one microphone approach, then a large diaphragm condenser like this one is probably best. I say probably. We both agreed that small diaphragm condensers like
This one here, I have one right here.
Yeah, like this, little pencil mics are great for stereo and kind of relatively close miking the gong. And the difference is that these tend to be more accurate and more to deliver more realism than the large diaphragm condenser. Though these tend to be a little bit noisier than these. But there is a general rule with all music buying equipment, and we all know it from gong, is generally you get what you pay for. There are kind of few exceptions, but largely the more money you spend, the better quality of the components and the better quality of the microphone, the lower self-noise it'll generate. And so there aren't many shortcuts, but I'll gladly talk when we have questions about all sorts of different microphone manufacturers, ones that we found that are good, and go through like a range of budgets. Yeah. So then we have this next phase of which is how do you get the sound from once it's in the computer? How do you broadcast it, and what are the different platforms? And again, there is a range, and there's a real difficulty here for us. There's a real difficulty because one of the platforms that provide the most intimacy, the platforms that feel like a closed group, like the one that we're using here, unfortunately, I'm yet to find one that has really good audio capabilities because they weren't built for that. I have a feeling that some of them will like invest in that. So this is a real difficulty. It would be great if one of the meeting platforms and maybe if someone took it on board as a research project to see which one delivers the best audio, that would be great. But I'm yet to find one that delivers really good quality audio, which is such a shame because this is a great kind of intimate meeting environment that feels really safe, unlike the busy marketplace, which was Denise's analogy of Facebook. You know, we're not used to resting in Facebook. It feels open and it feels it has a different kind of feeling than a kind of Zoom meeting intimacy. Though I think there are things that can be done on this platform. I think the way that Petra worked with sound on Tuesday was fantastic. Pre-recording something and then mixing that in with your live stuff is a way to go. And so perhaps this is some way we can collaborate with one another as well. If someone has a really great gong recording setup, they could provide the pre-recorded gong for people who are delivering sessions in Zoom. And I think there's also an opportunity there for, us to record kind of 5, 10, 15-minute bits of gong for Shavasana for yoga teachers. So there's this option of using Zoom as the meeting platform or one of the other meeting platforms, and where you can hold the space, and where you can set the intention, and where you can guide people, and then use pre-recorded gong sounds, either via Zoom or as another one of my colleagues then sends people to SoundCloud and delivers a higher quality audio to them that way. So there is another kind of option. And then there's Facebook makes it easy for people. It makes it's a beautiful kind of press one button approach, and Instagram, and I guess that's why it's been so widely used. But again, you will improve the quality of the audio with the stuff with the what you've done before, the microphone and the audio interface. But Facebook has its own limitations. And I don't know, mixed results I've found with the sound. Some people are getting kind of reasonable-ish results, but it isn't as good a quality as if you are broadcasting to either YouTube or Twitch. And these are the ones that provide the best quality. But in order to do that, you need to put another thing in the chain, something that Facebook does for you, which is what they call a software encoder. And it's a piece of software that allows you to bring in your audio feed and your video feed and then set some settings and stream it to various different platforms. And you can stream to, most of them you can stream to all sorts of platforms via this software encoder. So you can use that to composite things and stream to YouTube and Facebook, for instance. But you can use it to stream to YouTube, and you can use it to stream to Twitch and various other things. And that's going to be the best quality that you can achieve. Now there are a couple of free ones. There's one called Open Broadcast Studio, or OBS, which works both for Mac and PC. It's not my preference, but it's the only free one for Mac. I found that if your recording level is a little bit is kind of at what I would consider to be normal level as a sound engineer, it distorts for me. But other people say that isn't the case. But for me, if you're a PC user, I would go for a program called XSplit, which you do have to pay $4.99 a month for, or there is a free version, but it's a little light. And I've had really good results with that. And then there are kind of real pro ones that the musicians use, things like Wirecast, and there's a whole load, but they tend to, you have to pay something a month. But both those two, OBS and XSplit, will get you started if you wish to stream to YouTube and to Twitch. And I'll be really interested when we open it up to questions whether anyone else has got any other possibilities of those. And then the last thing that really needs to be considered is your receiver's end, because one of the things I've also discovered is that people are so used to consuming just using their laptop speakers and their phone speakers, and lots of people haven't even got stereos anymore, and so a little bit of care needs to be taken in helping the person at the other end do their setup. I know that Claudio recommends headphones, and that is great for delivering good audio, and especially for people who haven't got good speakers. I like to suggest, especially if people have got a stereo, that they hook their device up to the stereo. And another option is, quite a few people have smart TVs where they can access YouTube on a smart telly, and most of those have really good sound. And the reason I prefer that other than headphones is you can then feel it in the body as well. You can with my studio monitors if someone plays something. So I think there is a real need to engage with your audience and to offer them some support, especially if you're wishing to maintain a group that you know that you've lost contact with over this time, that you can you engage with them and help them sort out their end. Because quite a few people have got a Bluetooth speaker kicking around, and that might be an option for them. Place your speaker nicely, make your space nice, and create this sense of importance. Because one of the things that a live gong bath does is so much of the work is done for us by the space, and especially with regular people, they're already set to lie down and connect with their breath without any work needing to be done. But we have to work a little bit harder, I think, when we're doing this digital domain in order to really help them and create the sense of importance. So they're not just like semi-scrolling on their Facebook channel, but have set their space and have set themselves ready to receive. And I think if you show some care in helping them create that space, then that will really really transmit and lead to a deeper experience. So we have 18 minutes left, so I think we better throw it open to
Absolutely.
we'd better throw it open to questions.
How do you want to do it? There's been a lot of questions that have come in through the chat. Are you able to access those questions and answer it
Yeah.
that way, first of all?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you can roll through those, that would probably be the best. And just if you can also acknowledge the person by name who's had the question, so we can kind of make sure
Okay.
everyone gets their needs met.
Chat.
I'm going through it. I don't not seen the questions yet.
I have to have.
Well,
Can I repeat the name of the software? There's one. So
Fabio
this is,
Periscope, which is another platform I have seen. I haven't tried. It's
so,
associated with Twitter.
yeah. So so this is the software encoders that are used to upload your audio and video to YouTube or Twitch. So the free one, the open source one that's available on Mac and PC is called Open Broadcast Software. If you're a PC user, I would recommend XSplit, which is XSplit. If you search for software encoders, you'll find a whole load of the pro ones. Wirecast is one that a lot of the professionals use. They all come with a range of features, and they're pretty cool.
Maybe I can take, there is a question from Adalet that says, when we talk about an audio interface, is this a link an iPhone, a link to an iPhone, iPad, or Zoom H5? Just to make it clear, the audio interface is the translator between whatever you are using, let's say a microphone, and the computer. Is the one that turns the input of the microphone digital and brings it into the computer so that you can stream it or do what their team is putting a good picture of audio interface. If you talk Tim, then you are the main window so people can see it better.
There is a picture of audio interfaces, and they're most of those are just 2 channels in. So that will cope with 2 microphones. You can get ones that have 16 channels in, so you could have 16 mics. The little white thing there, which is called an icicle, is a useful little thing. If you already have a microphone, it will convert it into USB, so you can plug it into your computer. So it converts a generic microphone into a USB microphone. Interestingly, so that's made by a company called Blue, and Blue make like a whole range of USB microphones, and they were a pro mic manufacturer before they entered the USB market. So they're a good company, but there are other USB microphones are available.
And to answer the rest of your question, I'd let the Zoom H5, what that you're mentioning, that's a field recorder, but also acts as an audio interface. So it has this dual capability. So it will connect to your computer and transfer the signal from several microphones into the computer, but you have limited range into the kind of things that you can do with that signal. Pretty much you can only tweak the strength of the signal coming in, the gain of the signal.
So there's another question here that's talking about brands of interface, and I also saw that someone said that the Focusrite Scarlett is a good interface. I agree, it's great. There are loads of two-in interfaces. There's two review sites that I use a lot. One is called Gear Sluts, and it's a forum where lots of people go and talk about gear, and you can type in the gear and you can take a consensus of the opinion. And there's another thing called Sound on Sound magazine, who write really good reviews, and even if you don't understand it, at the bottom they always have a pros, cons and alternatives section, and that's a really great place to go. In terms of little mixers, one of the things that's happened over the last few years is, because podcasting has become more popular, there's a whole range of podcast mixers which are really cool for us because they're nice and physical, and a lot of them come with reverb. So if you want to sing, you can just dial your reverb on.
This is what reverb sounds like.
Yeah. And so that's a really good option for us. And there are lots available, but there's one that I really liked the look of. It has 2 mic preamps, so that just allows for 2 microphones. It has a couple of other channels that if you wanted to put some pre-recorded music and keep that in the physical domain as well, and it has a good reverb, and that's made by Soundcraft, and it's called the Analog 8 FX. But there are a lot. It's really reasonably priced. It gets good reviews, but there are others available. But that, for me, is a bit of a killer product. So,
just to answer to Alessandra, because Alessandra is asking whether if you record something, the quality is. She's asking, is the quality is going to be better than a live event? And I would say definitely, most definitely, yes. Because you have a lot more control of your input, of your signal and everything.
Yeah.
You can play around. If you feel that, there are you get a little bit of ambient noise in your recording, you can bring it down when you're doing the post-processing in your program, the digital audio workstation. So you have so much more control that definitely the quality will be better. And basically the sky is the limit into the kind of things that you can do once you start processing the sound.
Yeah. And I think there's a whole load of creative options. I mean, with all of this stuff, musicians have known for a long time that a live performance and a recorded product is a completely different thing. They're approached in a different way. And there's stuff that you can do in the recording realm that you can't do live, or that's difficult to do live. And so there's opportunities for us here to create some really beautiful digital gong healing art product. That are different, but I think it's good to approach it in a different way than I want to just capture what I do live. Though I'm not saying that isn't an option as well. So there was another question about what's the opinion on a DAW? What DAW? So the DAW stands for Digital Audio Workstation, and they're bits of software that allow you to record and manipulate sound and multiple tracks of sound and produce audio product on your computer. And there are loads of them, and they're all great. So the ones that are the big names are Logic and Pro Tools and Cubase. And I use a program called Reason these days. I used to use Cubase for a long time. All of these are expensive, and all of them have light versions. And then, I mean, GarageBand is a DAW which comes free bundled with. You've been using Reaper, Claudio?
Yeah, I was gonna say about that. Reaper, I'm writing it down. I misspell Cubase, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
So Reaper, it's a very interesting DAW because it's free. That's a very good point. A very
Yeah.
interesting selling point. It's free, and then you get an evaluation period of 60 days, and then after 60 days you can continue to use it. And if you really want to buy it, it's 60 euro. So it's very cheap, and it's extremely it's very very complex to use. But there are a few things that you can get started with that are very simple, and the possibility is very customizable. So the possibilities are endless. Personally, because I use Reaper, and I use Ableton, which it's Ableton. It's something a little bit different. It's a different type of DAW because you can actually work with loops and kind of create your own mixes pretty easily. That's the nice thing about Ableton. But in Reaper, what you can do, you can process sound in such a way. It's very good to do what is called, and that's why I recommend the headphones, is to work with binaural audio, which is really working on with the shape of your skull and really bringing a very realistic image of the sound onto onto your ears. And the next step from binaural is called ambisonic sound. That's when things get very complex, and to work with that type of surround ambisonic binaural sound, Reaper is extremely good. There are all sorts of tools that it has, many free tools to work with it. So personally, that's why I favor it, and also because of the manufacturer. But the other ones are amazing, of course.
I'm wondering if we can bring in Fabio. He has a lot of experience as well, and he's writing in Ardor is a free and open source.
Which one is free open source, Fabio?
Oh, wait, I'm gonna unmute him. Here we go.
Unmute him.
Hello,
Fabio, are you with
everybody.
us?
Yes, I was referring to Ardour. I write in the chat. It's a DAW which is free for Windows, Mac, and Linux, and I'm using it for my sessions.
Yay.
Thank
Good
you.
to know. Good to know. Yeah.
Have a try.
Yeah. And they all take a little bit of getting used to. Worth noting is that sometimes your USB microphone or your audio interface will come bundled with a light version of one of these digital audio workstations. So if you are shopping, it's worth saying, ooh, okay, that comes with some audio processing software. That's kind of cool.
One other point that I wanted to mention that I didn't get to mention is that a lot of this can seem daunting. Some of this may sound like a completely different language, but bear with it and take a bit of time. And one thing that I did is I scouted all the second-hand websites to get a little bit of equipment to start trying, and I found some amazing deals even on Facebook Marketplace or in eBay. There are many things that you can experiment with that if they don't suit you, you can resell afterwards. So that limits a little bit your financial exposure. And maybe after trying a few things, you say, well, this is not for me, I want to do something else. I mean, working on the second-hand market, it could be something to consider.
So there's a question here about microphones, about what to get, how many to get, and what type to get. Well, just before I go into that, I just want to say something about mic placement, because we haven't talked about that and we're getting towards the end of time. And I have been absolutely, I mean, I've known it for a long time. When you record in I've still got my audio interface up there.
I
I'll
was going to
come
tell
back.
you, we don't
I'll
see
come back to you. Hang on. When you're recording an instrument, where you place the mic makes so much difference, and it's really true for the gong. And you have to play with it. You have to experiment with it. There's no because every room, it makes a difference what room you're in. I'm in a kind of my room is reasonably dry, it hasn't got too many reflections. Um, but yeah, the where you place the mic will make a huge difference to the sound and a huge difference to what frequencies are being picked up. Um, and it won't be necessarily what you expect. And sometimes you'll place a mic in a position where it will be really bassy, and then other times you'll place it into a place where you're not getting much in the way of bass. Um, so yeah, this question is saying so so you have to play, you have to record some stuff, move the mic, record some stuff, um, and 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 see what's best. So we've kind of come to a consensus that it's best to place the mic behind the gong if you've got space, but you don't want it to be the gong to be too close to the wall and the mic to be in between that. You need kind of you want some nice distance, so that depends on your room. You don't want the mic to be too close to the wall. You don't want it to be too close to the gong, so you need some distance. But you'll eliminate a lot of the you shuffling noise that way, which is really one of the big problems that we kind of face.
And then there is one point, Tim, that I think it's important that we didn't discuss at all, and it may seem a little bit silly, but it's cables. Cables come in many shapes and sizes. Usually, if you work with a microphone, you're likely to work with XLR cables. And one thing I learned the hard way is that XLR cables come in different forms. You have cables, the normal cables, they're called unbalanced, and you have balanced cables. If you have an unbalanced cable, you are very likely to pick up interference. If they are crossed over one another, they will have interference. If you have balanced cables, that interference is out. They're a little bit more expensive, but if you're investing, it's definitely better to get balanced cables.
This is true. So let's talk about mics. So what I said before is, pretty much you get what you pay for, and the more money you spend, the better the results. And you can spend thousands of pounds on microphones, but none of us are going to be doing that. I have a dream that one day I'll own a Neumann U87, but I haven't got 2.5 grand to blow on it. So, and that's a large diaphragm condenser mic. And so let's talk. So the question was how many mics to get. Well, it depends on your technical experience, but the more mics you put into the equation, the more you get more difficulties, to be honest. It gets harder to mix. So I would say you start really simple with 1 or 2. If you haven't got any like sound engineering experience, you don't want to be getting a lot of microphones and throwing them around, because you'll have a huge learning curve, and you'll need a mixer as well for that point. So yeah, if you want to capture a whole range of instruments, then the large diaphragm condenser is the way to go, and using that kind of proximity in order to mix, or as a pair of small diaphragm condensers. But you don't want to go really cheap with small diaphragm condensers. You need to be spending some money. So these are made by a company called Octava, and they do a really nice stereo pair. And these, I would say, are in the kind of mid-range budget. So I think a pair is like 300 quid, so that might be too much for most people. They're called the Mark 01201, and they're really great for the money. Really great for the money. You can get, there are a few companies that make good quality and reasonably well. There's a whole flood of the market that aren't the main players, but I'll mention the main players, which are companies like AKG and my mind has gone blank. I'm
Well, I
trying to
have
think.
a pair of Lewitt microphones, which are very. I mean, these ones are a little bit cheaper.
Yeah.
They are a little bit below the 200 euro range for 2, and my experience has been very, very positive.
Yeah, Lewitt are really well regarded. Um, Rode, of course, lots of people have bought an NT1. I used one of those years ago. I found them to be quite harsh, but apparently the newer ones are great. And so that's a large diaphragm condenser you can get for just a little over it's a little over 100 and something euros, isn't it? A Rode NT1, and they also do some Rhodes do some kind of a stereo pairs of small diaphragm condensers, which are worth considering. There's a company called Golden Age Projects, which I are their mics are made in China. That they're good value, bang for the buck, as they say. Um, uh, I've completely gone blank on the kind of main players. Sony. But yeah, I mean, if anyone has like specific questions on mics, because it's just too, it's it's best to just kind of contact me and we can chat about it. Because the thing that I said right at the beginning of the thing was everyone's situation is different.
And also there is one point that is important is that there is something, I mean, without getting too technical, there is something in the way the microphone picks the sound up. It's called a polar pattern. It's
Yeah.
how the sound is picked up by the microphone. And the polar pattern usually is called cardioid, which is, it picks it up from one particular point. The microphone is more sensitive. So it's the front usually of the microphone. That's where you speak to, and the back is less sensitive. But there are some microphones that have an omnidirectional pattern, which may be also interesting to consider. That means that you have one microphone picking up the same level of signal all around it instead of one particular side. So this polar pattern is something that you also need to look up. And some microphones, when you start getting a little bit to the higher end, for example, if you look at Rode, it's the NT2, not the NT1, the NT2 has a switch that allows you to have a normal cardioid polar pattern or omnidirectional, so you can play around with that.
Yeah, this has a switch too. It has three different polar patterns. They also have a figure of eight one, which is like this, and so you don't doesn't pick up sounds from the side. And the question in there was which polar pattern to go for. And this again, it's like there's no easy answers. If you're you can get also hypercardioid, which is really directional. And so for instance, if you're using a multi-mic setup and you want some really sensitive mics over the singing bowls, then you want to eliminate a lot of the sound coming from other directions, what they call spill into microphones. Then you would go for a narrower polar pattern. That's the principle. The principle is that the wider the pattern, the more sound it's going to pick up from different directions, and sometimes you don't want sound coming from. I don't if my bowls are over there. I don't want too much sound going in from the gong into those mics, which have to be turned up a lot louder in order to pick up the delicacy of the bowls.
But in case people have, let's say that, they can only invest in one or two microphones, I would say that, ideally you would ideally have to go for probably one at least omnidirectional and one cardioid. I would say that'll be the split that I would do, or a figure of eight that you're saying, so that you can be very, very direct. Some of the
Possibly, yeah. Again, and the reason why things are so bespoke is if you're playing your gongs in a really lively room with a lot of sound reflection and a lot of noise bouncing off walls, a bit in a big room, then maybe a tighter pattern is better than a bigger pattern. Otherwise, you can get a really muddy sound, if that makes sense. So, but actually, we want the gong sounds richer with some reflection. So it's this incredible balance because our ears are picking up from direct from the source and from reflection, and we with one mic it can't really do it justice. In a recording studio you might use 12 mics on a drum kit, but if you're not an engineer, it's not worth going down kind of too complex a route. It's little by little. And the thing to be said really is it's only minimal gains. You put a lot of work in for minimal gains. So the simple solution of one or two mics, um, and focusing on what platform you're using is really, you're going to get like some good results, and going beyond that, you'll get slightly better for a lot of work, and each step will be a lot of work and slightly better. So you can get great results with one or two mics, a simple interface, and to a reasonably good streaming platform.
I think Don was asking Tim about plates for singing bowls.
Yeah, boundary mics, yeah. So those are, yeah, so you can get mics that are like flat plates, they're called boundary mics, and if you put them on the floor near your singing bowls, they will pick up your singing bowls. You need to be careful walking around them, and also they can get spill. But if you're doing it just for recording rather than in a live hole setting, then yeah, that is one of the recommendations. I've never used them, but that is, yeah, they're flat plates that you can put on the floor around your singing bowls. Cool.
So I hate to cut us off, but we've
Yes,
gone over.
we're well over.
Oh,
So
sorry.
I just wanted to thank. Where is Don? Is he gonna come back in here?
Also, summaries are good
Don?
when it's the chest thing.
I'm gonna unmute you.
All right,
Are you back?
I'm back.
I see a photo. I don't see your face.
I'm trying. There. Okay.
Don?
I just wanted to say that, with the yoga, using this mudra here is a very nice mudra, holding down Saturn finger for your hearing problems.
Mhm.
So holding down the Saturn finger. And there's one exercise that's very good as well for hearing, which is, in the morning when we comb our hair, like this, so while we're ambidextrous now, combing with both sides, holding that mudra and using this motion here in the deltoids starts to get hot. So these are considered to be the finger mudras and the motion that relates to hearing. So you can do what you like insofar as your movements go, as long as the deltoid gets hot. And then you're spot on that way here. So you can move your arms any way, but it's usually combing your hair every morning that you use that deltoid muscles. And the mudra, of course, is here. And you can do it several times a day. They do say that don't hold this mudra too long, but otherwise, several times a day to improve the hearing.
All right, thank you, Don.
Thank you.
Thank you, Claudio and Tim. We're gonna keep the lines open. I'm gonna stop the official recording, though part of me doesn't want to because I feel like we keep getting these fantastic little pearls of wisdom that continue.
Oh, I was leaning on something, sorry.
Oh, I thought that was part of it. It'd be nice to, besides you guys talking, do you guys want to show us some prime examples of?
Well, we could end with a little song, couldn't we?
You always could.
Go for it, Tim.
One of the things that that I said was, there's things you can do in this environment which you can't do in the, or harder to do live, and we can be really playful.
I do this here. While he's doing it, I'm going to do my exercise.
Yeah. And smile and breathe. And you can apply any breath you like. You could apply breath of fire or slow, deep breathing, but always smiling.
I'm awake in a dream. sea of love. I'm floating in a sea of love. I'm floating, yes, I'm floating in a sea of love. I'm floating in a sea of love. And I'm now just a drop in the ocean, of the whole wide ocean. And we're awake, we're awake, we're awake. We're awake in a dream. We're awake in a dream. And together we are that sea of love. We are that sea of love. And together we are that sea of love. We are that sea of love. Yes, we're floating together in a sea of love. In a sea of love.
That was great, Tim.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Claudio. Thank